Dear students, I am going to teach class 5 science chapter 4 and the topic is pollination. Before going to discuss about pollination, I am discussing about the parts of flower. If you don't have any clear idea about the parts of flower, you will not be able to understand about pollination. A flower has 4 parts: sepal, petal, stamen and carpel. You just go through the diagram. Structure of flower. Sepal is showing here by using green color. Sepals are green in color here and petals are red in color. Stamen is not labeled here, but anther and filament together form stamen. That means a stamen has 2 parts, anther and filament. And stigma, style, ovary, these are the parts of carpel or pistil. So a flower has 4 parts: sepal, petal, stamen and carpel. And the lower portion, at the base of the flower, I think you have noticed the base of the flower is, it's a solen structure from where all the parts come out. This solen portion is called receptacle. Now see the diagrams given in right hand side. Here stamen and pistil, these 2 parts are showing separately. Stamen has 2 parts, anther and filament, I have told already, and pistil has 3 parts: stigma, style and ovary. Now I am going to discuss the chapter through some question answers like the previous chapters. Question number 1: name the different parts of flowers. I have already told you that sepal, petal, stamen and carpel. All the sepals collectively called calyx, all the petals collectively called corolla, all the stamens collectively or together called androecium, and all the carpel or pistils collectively called gynoecium. Now stamen is the male part and carpel is the female part of a flower. So you just go through question number 2. Name the male and female part of a flower. You know already. Stamen is the male part and carpel or pistil is the female part of flower. Now what are the different parts of stamen? Stamen has 2 parts, I have told you already: anther and filament. Now in which part of stamen pollen grains are produced? Pollen grains, actually these are the male reproductive cell. Pollen grains are also called male gamete or male reproductive cell, and these pollen grains are produced in the anther. So where does pollen grains produced? Pollen grains are produced in anther. Next question: what are the different parts of carpel? You know already. A carpel has 3 parts: stigma, style, ovary. Then question number 6: in which part of carpel eggs are produced? Eggs are produced in ovary. The lower solen portion of pistil is called ovary and the eggs are produced in ovary. What is pollination? Pollination means transfer of pollen from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant or another flower of different plant. Here I have given the definition very briefly. Transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower is called pollination. Now question number 8: what are different types of pollination? There are 2 types of pollination: self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination and cross-pollination. Now what is the definition of self-pollination? That means define self-pollination. Self-pollination means when pollen grains transfer from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower, because some flower contains all the four parts. For example, hibiscus. Hibiscus contains all the four parts, that is sepal, petal, stamen and carpel. So pollen grains can be transferred from the from the anther of the stamen to the stigma of the same flower, or from the anther of a flower to the stigma of another flower of same plant. That means both the flowers remain in the same plant. So this kind of pollination is called self-pollination. I am just going through the definition given here. Transfer of pollen from the anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant is called self-pollination. Now, what is cross-pollination? Cross-pollination means transfer of pollen grain from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower of another plant of same type. So, transfer of pollen from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower of another plant of same type is called cross-pollination. Now, why is hibiscus called a bisexual flower? Hibiscus is called a bisexual flower because it contains both male and female parts. I have told already, that is stamen and carpel, because hibiscus contains all the four parts: sepal, petal, stamen and carpel. That is why it is called bisexual flower. Now, what is bisexual flower? A flower which contains both male and female parts. A flower which contains both male part, that is stamen, and carpel, that is female part, is called bisexual flower. Now, what do you mean by unisexual flower? Unisexual flower means when a flower contains either male part, that is either stamen or carpel. Some flowers contain stamen only, they are called male flower. Some flowers contain carpel only, they are called female flower. Now, what is fertilization? Fertilization means fusion of pollen and egg cell. Fusion of pollen and egg cell is called fertilization. Now, what happened to ovary and ovules after fertilization? After fertilization, what happens? After fertilization, ovary develops to form fruit and ovules develop to form seeds. So, seeds are produced from ovules and fruits are produced from ovary. Now, where does fertilization takes place? Fertilization takes place in the ovary. Always fertilization takes place in the ovary. So, actually it's a very short chapter and very few questions are given from here. Now, you just try to solve exercise questions what are given in the books. All questions, fill in the blanks, matching, true false. Question answers are also very easy, and I am giving you some homework questions.